The topic is sharing space, using time and sharing space effectively. And the using time roughly correlates to executive functioning, and the sharing space roughly correlates to social thinking. But I can tell you, particularly with my individuals with average IQ and or reading comprehension that is at their age level or their grade level, not necessarily their fluency, but their comprehension, because I have a lot of individuals who are very fluent readers, but not very good comprehenders. Those two things almost always coexist. And it's not just for individuals with autism. It's many different types of learners and many different types of individuals, including individuals that would consider themselves neurotypic. So I don't want you to think that this is just about autism. It just frequently occurs for individuals in the autism spectrum. Okay, so executive functions are the set of processes that have to do with managing ourselves. And the term executive functioning was first coined by from the standpoint of executive, meaning like a CEO or a CFO, those skills that an executive needs in order to manage their larger corporation or their larger business. And what that revolves around is how well they function as an executive. Now, from a neurologic standpoint, we've taken that many steps further about what parts of the brain control executive functioning and what parts of the brain work together in order to have organizational skills for it's more than organization, but organizational skills that help us be able to be functioning within our own worlds. And that really depends on what your world looks like, right? But it involves working memory, it involves flexible thinking. So think about those learners that you have or that you know of that are kind of stuck in what they will or won't do. Okay. And of course, we all have lots and lots of examples, but it's those kind of rigid thinkers that have more significant difficulties with executive functioning. I also find that the more rigid a thinker is, or the more inflexible a thinker is, the more difficult reading comprehension and written expression are, which makes sense as we kind of go forward with this discussion. And then the next piece of it is self-control or impulse control, some people will call that. It also has to do with self-regulation, not only for emotions, but for seeking. It could be seeking sensory input. It could be seeking preferred activities. It could be seeking time away from others, right? So that self-control piece is a very big piece to executive functioning. And honestly, I find it to be one of the most difficult things to think about in terms of intervention. Okay, so executive functioning serve as the kind of the command and the control function. So on your computer, when you have to do something, you usually have to use either the command button or the control button in order to make things switch on your screen. They can be viewed kind of as like the conductor, the person who controls all of our cognitive skills. And again, that does make a lot of sense, because in order to be effective across time and space, we need to have working memory. We need to be a flexible thinker, and we need to have self-control or impulse control in order to function with whatever environment we come into. And you'll find that one of the other things that I've learned, and y'all know as educators, is that cycling back to concepts and cycling back to intervention and strategies is imperative with this population, because it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. It's kind of like if you've ever tried to learn something difficult, like I always use the example of riding a motorcycle, but learning a language would be the exact same thing. So if you're learning a language and you get pretty decent at it, and then for whatever reason you stop utilizing it for a period of time, when you come back to it, you're rusty. You know, you don't have as good of comprehension. You're not as flexible in your thinking. It's not as fluent. The same thing applies to these concepts, social thinking and executive functioning. We have to stay on it. One of the things that I get asked quite a bit is, when do you think you'll be done with my kid? Right? Never. Never is the answer, right? But what does your learner, what does your student, what do you as an individual who has executive functioning and or autism, how are you going to apply these concepts? So I almost always, with all my adults, I don't remember a time where I haven't, I use the analogy of a boat. So they are the captain of their boat and they have the steering wheel, but I am just the rudder. So I kind of help push in the direction that they're looking to go, but they are always in control of which way they choose to go. So we can talk about goal setting and self-monitoring, but if they choose to sit in front of the TV and play Roblox all day, they're the captain, right? And so then the consequences of that are, I don't have my work done, I got fired from my job, you know, whatever. Okay, just like you and I, it's the same thing, right? Okay, there's lots of activities. So, I'm sorry, what I was saying about is cycling back to different tasks in terms of, I use the analogy of learning a language. One of the things that I've done through this presentation is I've repeated myself a couple of times because I want you to be kind of thinking about it across the presentation and as we start getting into social thinking a little bit. Also knowing we only have an hour and a half, okay? So these are kind of a glossing or an introduction to executive functioning and social thinking. Not kind of, they are an introduction. Okay, so some of the life tasks, it could be organizing a trip, it could be doing a research project or a paper for school, it could be literally anything. We have to make sure as adults, we have to look at what the end result is and imagine ourselves at that end result. And you and I, or people who do not have executive functioning challenges, do this all the time, and we do it like that. We might not be perfect at it, but we're constantly doing it. Okay, so I kind of want you to be thinking about how much effort you put into this without even realizing it, because it will help you better understand some of the challenges that our students have. Okay, it's how we imagine ourselves across time and space. It's that imagination of our future selves. Now, I don't know if you have access to somebody who has an executive functioning disorder and or autism. Ask them, when you get home tonight, what will it look like? Okay, so when I think about that, I think about, okay, I have a crock pot of scalloped potatoes on my stove. I have some pork chops that do need to be thawed a little bit more, or they're not going to turn out well. They're going to be dried out. So I need to think about, what does my future self look like making supper? And I imagine that across time and space. I can see myself going to my stove. I can see myself putting the pork chops out and putting them into the microwave. Maybe, 6-7 minutes, just to kind of get that frost off. I can see myself doing those steps in order to get my supper on the table by whatever time, 5:30 or 6, depending on what everyone else is doing, right? But I have to organize that, and I have to know what I don't have and what I do have across time in order to make my supper get on the table at a reasonable time, okay? And I do that like this. Okay. If I ask one of the individuals that I work with that have executive functioning challenges, they will probably say to me, "You mean my kitchen?" "Yes, your kitchen. What does your kitchen look like?" "Well, it's brown and it has a microwave," right? But they struggle to get those steps across time and space. So making a to-do list like put pork chops in the oven will not work for an individual with executive functioning. And how many times have we been talking about visual schedules and visual lists, right? It does not work. And we should know that by now, right? I don't know why we haven't figured that out. Okay, so how do they present? Problems, they are a neurobiological nature, okay? So it is a brain challenge, and we're born with it, okay? It particularly affects planning, flexibility, organization, and self-monitoring. Okay, so there's one of my repetitive things, because I don't want you to think executive functioning just means organization. That flexibility in thinking, being able to see your future self, and emotionally regulating yourself for time and space is also actually the bigger part of executive functioning. Okay, so here's some of the things that I hear all the time. I did the work, but I didn't hit send. Okay. I don't even know what the work is. I know she wrote it up on the board, but she moved so fast I didn't know what she was talking about. So I just forgot about it, thinking it wasn't important because she didn't talk to me. Right? People with executive functioning difficulties have a challenge knowing what is their direction, what is directed to them versus what is directed to the collective whole. Okay. And that is also a challenge with people with autism. Okay, so difficulty picking a topic, planning the project, sequencing the materials, breaking it down into manageable units with intermediate deadlines, okay? So we're talking about those things that we have that is a larger, for this example, a larger project with many, many working parts, and God forbid it's a group project, okay? All right, so getting started, we know that initiation is a core deficit for people with autism, okay? Initiation to get out the door, initiation to put on deodorant, initiation to do a project, okay? That getting started, and one of the, I've talked to lots of adults with autism about this, individuals who are very successful in terms of what we see as success, jobs, family life, those kinds of things, not necessarily what they see as success, and ask them, okay, so what is the deal with getting started? And they'll say, more times than not, they'll say, yeah, but, and then they'll have some situation. Yeah, but it was 5 o'clock and this was happening. Yeah, but my wife called me for supper. Yeah, but my kids were crying. That makes sense? There's a whole bunch of yeah buts. And so I started saying to some of my individuals, yeah, but doesn't make it in Brittney land. Okay? Because if you say yeah, but, it is just, it's escape, maintain behavior, right? From a behavioral standpoint, right? So what can you tell me about why you didn't start? I didn't start because I didn't want to. I didn't start because I didn't know what to do. I didn't start because I was anxious. I didn't start because I was afraid. Whatever it is, I want to know why you didn't start, not the yeah buts that are the excuses. Okay, almost always leave the project to the night before it's due, okay? Now, for you and I who have organizational strengths, right? And I don't know if you do or not, but usually I do. I tend to work better under pressure. Right? I kick it out, I just hit it, I turn off all my stimuli and I just kick it out. If I have too much time, I don't do as well, right? So like, for example, I've known about this presentation for what, Dan, I don't know, 3 months or something, I don't know, a long time. And when did I do it? I actually did it last Friday because I didn't want to work on the weekend, right? Okay. But then I went and looked at it again on Monday. I'm like, yeah, it's good. And I didn't look at it again until I came in today. So, I think, you have to think about what your personality is and what your learner strengths are. But for the most part, these individuals who do have organizational challenges will leave it until the night before it's due. So things like extended time for tests, okay, that's all right. Extended time for turning in projects, probably not in their best interest, right? Because basically they'll still be not done. Right? And what does extended time for projects or extended time to turn in assignments really mean For this teacher, it could be a week. For this teacher, it could be 2 days. For this teacher, it could be a class period. For this teacher, it could be, oh yeah, if you talk to me about it, it's fine. And then we have to navigate all that social stuff. So why do it at all? Right? Because they have an initiation problem. Okay. All right. Some of the adjectives or phrases that I hear all the time from parents, from the people themselves, from teachers, from physicians, from other psychologists or psychiatrists. Oh, they're just lazy and motivated. He or she is smart, but, okay, they're non-compliant, they're clueless, they're immature, they're frustrating, they're annoying, or they're a boastful braggart. Okay. Whenever I hear those things, I always think, what is the underlying function? What is the underlying reason? Because, and this is a Ross Greene quote, people do not wake up in the morning and say, yeah, I'm going to give it 20%. They just don't, right? We wake up going, I'm going to do the best I can do, right? And that my best, secondary to depression, secondary to paranoia, might be 20% as compared to another person, but we don't wake up saying, yeah, I'm going to give it less, right? Okay, and also, I'm starting to despise Zoom, right? Because I feel like, right? So please, I don't know how we would interrupt, but please interrupt if you want more information or clarification or something. It doesn't bother me at all. Okay? Okay. All right. So executive functioning, and here's another repetition. Executive functioning is responsible for paying attention. Okay. Now, when we get later into the presentation, when we start talking about social thinking, I never say pay attention to my kids or my adults or my whoever. I'll say, is your brain in the group or out of the group? Okay. Because that they can get their head around. That makes sense. Is your brain in the group? They can make a picture of that in their head, right? Paying attention is much more abstract, and the interpretation is left up to the listener, right? Okay. And sometimes our kids don't look like they're paying attention when they are, right? Sometimes people, not just even our kids, sometimes people don't look like they're paying attention when they are, right? But even if we don't, like if you and I who have typical sharing space skills and typical executive functioning skills, even if we don't look like we're paying attention, we also know how to check in with the listener. We also know how to provide eye gaze opportunities in order to let the other person know that we are interested, but how much we're interested. So we're better at managing those kind of nonverbal subtleties, okay? It's also responsible for organizing and planning, prioritizing. Prioritizing is a very big, crucial element, and that's another reason why just lists don't work, okay, for this population. Starting tasks and staying focused on them enough to complete them or come back and check for quality, right? Understanding different points of view. Okay, so why is different points of view under executive functioning? Think about expected teacher behavior or expected professor behavior, right? I have 3 daughters. 2 of them have been through college and 1 of them is in high school. And all 3 of them will tell you you have to understand the professor's point of view in order to make it through their class. Right? And it doesn't matter if it's about turning in assignments, grading, philosophical points of view, and you don't have to necessarily like it, but you have to know how to navigate it. I almost said schmooze, but you have to know how to navigate it, right? It also...
This is Karen. That's interesting to me, that because students often, college students anyway, will often say, well, this professor works this way and this professor, the students do talk about that all the time, but I hadn't thought about it in that term. So that's interesting.
Yeah. And, and college, you're right. College students do talk about it all the time, but the college student with executive functioning challenges or organizational challenges or social thinking challenges, they would say, and I'm using this term loosely, they may say, So what?
Right.
I can't help it that they have a different point of view than mine.
Right.
I still believe
I hadn't thought about that as a social issue before, but that definitely is. That's interesting. Oh,
yeah. And then think about it from the standpoint of a spouse who has executive functioning disorder, or, you know, significant other, or boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, right? Think about that in terms of relationship management. Yeah, it's a big deal. Okay.
tricky.
It's tricky. It's tricky when you both think you know what you're doing, right? It's even more so tricky when one person thinks they know, but really doesn't.
Right. Hmm.
They make mistakes and they end up looking like jerks,
Right.
right? And that is not their intention. And when it's brought to their attention, remorseful and sad that they would do that to someone who has loved them.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, and then of course we get into whole anxiety and depression and all that. So regulating emotions, and it's not just what you think of with, I'm going to, be quiet when I'm upset. It's how big their emotions are. Okay. And how much they show of what other people might consider a small problem. Okay, so I just was sitting in here yesterday working on executive functioning with the 14-year-olds going into high school, just doing this yesterday. And he's also a show choir guy, right? So he is very emotive, right? He's like, ah, he has these great big giant emotions and great big giant gestures and facial expressions. And honestly, I love him because I'm cut from that same cloth. Not that I'm a performer, but I'm very emotive. And but we were talking about it because he's in a blended family situation. And when he's just telling me stories about his interactions with his step siblings or his siblings or whomever, he's like, he uses voices like, I don't want to do that, So I'm like, oh, dude, you're torquing off people, right? And here's why you're torquing them off. Because you're making fun of them. No, I'm not. I'm just saying what they sound like. Oh, I see. So, but you're saying they're annoying and you're imitating them in an annoying voice. Well, that's what they sound like. Let's think flexibly for a second, right? Let's pause and rewind. And I use that term mind camera quite a bit. So like you and I really am stopping myself from scanning over here to the other pictures because I can only see 3 faces. Right? And it's bugging me that I could only see 3 faces because my mind camera is going, what are the other 28 thinking? Because I can't see them, right? A person with executive functioning and social thinking challenges are going to be saying, I don't care. They can look however they want. It does not impact me in the slightest, but really it does, right? So that concept of a mind camera is something we're going to come back to too. Okay, so let's see. We do something as a rock in here. Oh, there we go. Okay, so I took this from a website. I don't remember what website. I just didn't want to use my own imagination. I think it was LD Online. So this is just a really nice example of a fictional person named Josh. 7 a.m., he knows he's forgetting something. Ah, that's it, his cleats for today's game. He runs back inside to get them, but he ends up leaving his backpack at home. As he races to catch the bus, he sprints past the checklist, quote unquote. Remember, checklists don't always work. In fact, they rarely do. His mom made to help him remember what he needs for school, but it's too late. The bus is about to pull away and he's gonna miss it again. Okay, so these executive functioning challenges, and we could say that Josh has ADHD. We could say that he's typically developing. I don't know. I would guess he has ADHD or something along those lines. Challenges related to executive functioning, organization, and then using working memory. He could not see himself on the bus with all the materials he needs. Okay, so the organization of gathering those materials, the timeliness of gathering those materials, the understanding of, oh, these are the materials that I need, and I can see myself on the bus with those materials. 11 a.m., Josh's teacher asks, who has a good answer to the first question I gave you yesterday about last night's reading assignment? Okay, first off, ew, it's a horrible question, right? For anybody, all the kids' anxiety just go, dee, 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 dee. Okay, anyway, Josh squirms, hoping he won't be called on. He didn't write the questions in his planner, and he has no idea how to answer them, okay? To me, that one of the underlying skill deficits in this scenario is when she was saying These are the questions I'm going to ask you tomorrow. Everyone else, she might not have said, write them in your planner, but everyone else said, I have to make note of this because my teacher's point of view is this is important. It's kind of like a pop quiz, you know, but she's giving you preliminary information about it. Okay. So organization, how do I keep this information that's important to another person in my head? And how do I put focus? How do I put my brain in the group in order to know that this is going to be asked of me at a later time? It's kind of like when I sent, okay, I've been married 33 years. I've sent my husband to the store one time and it was so punishing. I've never done it again. Okay. Because I said, and it was literally, I don't even know if we were married yet. It might've been 34 years ago. And so I gave him the list, quote unquote, the list. And you know what he did? Because the items on the list were not in the order of the store, he just didn't get them. Like, dude, you know, well, the apples were not by the canned pears or whatever, right? And I was like, oh dear, this is not a functional life skill for my husband. So now he can go and pick up anything, but he can't follow a list. All right, okay, 1 p.m. It's the best part of the school day, lunch, but Josh hogs the conversation, talking way too loud and too much about his video games. So you and I are making a picture of a lunchroom in our heads right now and what that might look like for Josh. He doesn't notice how annoyed his friends are getting, right? The fact that they use the word friends, I don't know if they're friends or not. Obviously, this is a fictional situation, but think about the subtle body language that those kids are doing to one another in order, or, you know, communicating with one another about Josh that Josh isn't picking up. Okay, so that's point of view, which is more social thinking than organization. It's point of view, it's self-control, right? How do I monitor my talk time in order to give people more good thoughts than weird thoughts? 3 o'clock. In soccer, he's so focused on getting the ball that he doesn't keep in mind which direction he's supposed to run. How many of us have seen kids do this? He quickly heads to the nearest goal and kicks the ball right into his own team's net. Now, keeping in mind this, I don't know, I did say how old Josh is. I'm picturing him as like a 5th grader. I don't know if that's right or not, but shifting focus and thinking flexibly. So a much younger child, you would expect it would be within the realm of social expectations for them to go the wrong way on the field, right? But for a kid who's that 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade up level, that is organization, executive functioning, attending. Right? And it's also shifting focus and knowing what's happening. I've got a sign up on my wall that says, keep calm and read the room. You know, those keep calm signs, right? This is a keep calm and read the room deficit. Okay. He didn't read the soccer field. All of his teammates are going this way. He's going that way. He didn't read the room efficiently. 6, he isn't happy when his mom tells him to turn off the TV and set the dinner table. When he thinks he's done, his little sister tattles that once again he forgot to give each person a cup. So organization, what does a set table look like? Right? Frustrated with his sister and with missing his TV show, he loses his cool and screams at her. Managing frustration, emotional regulation is what I call that, keeping emotions in check. Okay, how big is the size of this problem? How big is a missing cup to my relationship with my sister? 8 o'clock, after lots of prodding from his mom, which means this word prodding, I call that nagging, right? Josh sits down to do his homework, but he doesn't know where to start. Instead of doing the book report or the math problems that are due tomorrow, he surfs the web to find a topic for his science report that's due next week. Initiation, starting tasks, prioritizing. Then he takes a break to play a video game. Nothing is still accomplished, but now he's playing video games. 10 o'clock, when he finally starts the book report, his mind keeps jumping from one thought to another because now we're tired too. So think about setting events here, or we should be tired. He might be more hyper, honestly. He can't figure out what to write and only gets one sentence down on paper before he gives up for the night. Written expression, organization, seeing the big picture. He thinks he can do more on the way to school tomorrow, but remember, he forgot his cleats this morning. So can we possibly work on a book report when we don't even remember our cleats, right? Even though he's never gotten anything done while riding the bus with his friends. Paying attention, brain and group, staying on task, and organization. Now it's midnight. It's way past bedtime. He's exhausted. He tries to go to sleep, but he can't shut off his brain. He keeps worrying about disappointing the teacher with the book report and getting teased by his teammates for kicking the ball into the wrong goal. So now we have anxiety, we've got that mental health component. Okay, so I want to do just a quick get ready, do done. This is, and down here at the bottom, I don't know if y'all can see it, I got to move your faces, but down here at the bottom, this is from efpractice.com. Can y'all see it? I don't know what you can and can't see. Does it say www.efpractice.com?
Yeah, we can
Yeah, it
see
does.
it. Yes, thank
Yep.
you.
Okay, and that executive functioning practice, it's also cognitive connections. It's with a speech language pathologist called Sarah Ward, named Sarah Ward. They're out of Massachusetts. We had her at the Lighting the Way presentation, I don't remember if it was last year or the year before. And this is a strategy that, like the beginning strategies for her larger executive functioning programming. And I have found this to be very, very functional for me in terms of teaching kids about future self and being able to recognize the elements of how to get to the point of done. There's usually another column over here called Get Done. And I'm not going to talk about that because it gets a little bit more messy, but oops. Sorry, I'm going to go back here. I'm just going to fill this out as we talk. So the done part might be math assignment turned in on time. Okay, and then this get ready part is the materials we need. The do part is the process. Okay, so we start at the done, because remembering, a lot of kids have a hard time about starting. So if we start at the done, they know what the end goal is. That makes sense? Versus having a list of math assignment, English assignment, reading assignment, take out the garbage, beep, 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 beep. Where in the world would I start on that list? Okay. So before get ready, do done, if we have a learner with a whole bunch of activities, we take a calendar and we figure out which is the priority. And then we put that highest priority on a get ready, do done. Okay, so let's say we've determined that this math assignment is the highest priority because the teacher's getting mad or something, right? Or it's due, it's past due, whatever. Okay, so math assignment turned in on time. The get ready is, now here's what's happened. 5 years ago when I was doing this, this list would be pretty heavy. Now it's iPad or tablet or whatever, because they have access to the book on the iPad or the tablet, which is a blessing for a lot of the kids that I work with. Okay, they have access to the worksheet on the tablet, right? They have access to a calculator on the tablet. So this list used to be a lot longer, but now with technology, it's not. So I'm going to do old school a little bit, and I'm going to make sure that they know that they have to access their calculator. They have their text. They have a pencil, they have a piece of paper, because we have to show our work in math. Okay, this right here is one of the biggest things for most of the people that I work with. Okay, and we can talk about that a little bit more too if you want to, but let's just assume they have some skills in order to use a pencil and a piece of paper. And then the do is here, and this is what I tell all my kids for math. Oops. Scan the problems, do what I know first. Okay, and I'm going to tell you why. Because a lot of our kids, because they have difficulty getting started, they will, if the first problem is one they don't understand, they won't do any of them. Right? And what this does is it gives them self-confidence to know that part of it is done. Now, in terms of accommodations, you might have a learner that you give 1 or 2 problems and they're done. And then you give through the third and the fourth problem, and then they're done. And then the fifth and the sixth. I'm not talking about that learner who struggles to see the big picture. I'm talking about that learner who can see the whole math assignment and go, yeah, I can get it done. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay.
Yep.
Sorry. Is that okay? Okay, so scan the problems, do what I know first. Go back and look at the earliest problem, so like whatever it is that isn't done. So that'd be like number 3 or 4 or 6 or whatever it is. Try it. If I don't get it, what are my resources? Okay. And this is me feeding this to them, because what I want them to do is then use this get ready, do done as they're working as a flow chart for getting to the done part. Okay, so what are my resources? Oops, this should be a question. What are my resources? All right, get ready. This is the material. Email to my teacher, John, who is great at math. This is just made up, of course. Ask my dad if he's home. Whatever the resources are, they go there. All right, because what will happen is right here, if we don't put this, if I don't get it, what are my resources? Stop. That makes sense. These are things that, this is what you and I just do naturally, but has to be put down for individuals who have executive functioning difficulties. Does that kind of give you an idea of get ready, do done? Yeah, I only have 55 minutes.
So, yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I kind of got a boogie now. Okay. All right. So where's my little magic button at the bottom?
Sounds like a good old task analysis, Brittney.
It is a good old task analysis, except for time and organization, are time and seeing their future self in completion is what's expected. And in a task analysis, we can forward chain or backward chain. In a get ready, do done, we start at the end and then go back to the beginning. That makes sense. So it is very, there's definitely, Bev, definitely. So, okay. The other part that I like about that is the language that is utilized with get ready, do done is, can you see yourself getting your tablet? Where's your tablet? Where's your charger? So the amount of detail you put into it is learner specific. Okay. And I know you guys aren't interventionists. I get it. Most of you aren't interventionists. I don't know if all of you are. But the challenge is that the students that you're working with face, most of the time we're not doing intervention at that post-secondary level. And they've skated by, many of them, because they're bright. Right? And they're have someone at home who is their right brain. Right? A mom or a sister or a grandma or a brother or whoever, right? And so then they go into a work situation or a college or a vocational situation or a relationship, and they don't have that prompt system, right? And in many cases, I have found out later, the individual whose right brain support system, they've been doing the work for them just to get them through, because mental health has been such an overwhelming concern. But they've got an IQ of 120, right? Or whatever, right? They got a near perfect score on the ACT, right? Okay. Anyway, you get the idea. Okay, so assignments, here's another repetition. Scheduling, completion of longer term projects or tasks, material management, daily living. Okay, get ready, do done for getting out the door in the morning is a very good tool. Initiating tasks, jobs, or demands. Okay, so I just have a young man with autism that I just started working with. He's through Voc Rehab, and he got into trouble he was a dietary person. So like he brought meals to people in assisted living, and he transported meals and all that kind of stuff. That's one of the few jobs that he really, really liked. And he didn't know how to manage the girl relationships in that job. And he got fired because a girl had too weird of a thought about him. And he was just devastated, right? And I know y'all know that MO. So now then COVID hits, and he is literally driving everybody crazy, including himself, because he's sitting at home getting into trouble, online shopping, getting into relationships online with chat rooms, looking at stuff on the computer he shouldn't be looking at, all that whole gig. And so I was like, we've got to get this man a job, right? And he got a job as a worker at Walmart, those online shopper people that are everywhere now. They're all over Walmart, right? And Hy-Vee and everything. And one of the biggest things we talked about is, what does your future self look like when you're interact? I mean, we covered all the job stuff, of course, and you talk to his boss and all that. I mean, I'm talking about the social and the organization. What we worked on primarily was those things that got him fired in the first place. He's always on time. He always has the things he needs. He doesn't always understand what his boss says. So we talked about how do we self-advocate, those kind of things. But I said, what is, in your job, we did get ready, do done for the cart, or like the groceries, the materials in the staging area to go out to the pickup area. What does that in the staging area look like? Right. And so we did get ready, do done for that sequence. Really, really helped him. And honestly, I think it helped him because it reduces anxiety of messing up. Right. And then he could see what it would look like. And then he learned that, I didn't know this, I don't know if y'all know this or not, but when you go to, I don't do online shopping, but if you go to Walmart and you pick up your groceries, a lot of times people will tip the person who puts it into their car for them. I didn't know that. Well, he figured that out. And he's like, so now I want to work out at the little kiosk area because sometimes I get tips. So his hourly wage is increasing pretty steadily. So it's kind of nice.
Brittney, this is Cindy from up in Aberdeen. That's funny because the first time I did that, I wanted to tip the gentleman and he said, we can't take tips.
Okay. And I said that too. I said, are you sure it's allowed? Because I know like at Vera, other places, they don't allow tips. And he goes, yeah, we've been talking about it. Everyone's taking them.
Oh yeah, carryout boys normally do it. Yeah, he said, no, we can't take them.
Right, at Hy-Vee, I know they do.
Yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, I don't know. I hope he doesn't get fired for it. So I said to him, I said, how do you, because we're not 100% sure, even though the employees are saying it's okay, we're not 100% sure if it's Walmart policy. So how are you going to ask your boss? And of course he's saying, why would I? Right? Because he's motivated by money. And I said, buddy, I said, you don't want to get fired over something as silly as taking a $5 tip. You just don't. I mean, your job and your mental health is too important. He said, okay. So I said, how are you going to introduce this with your supervisor? What's the get ready, do done for scheduling a supervisor meeting? And he did it. He Walmart has an app for its employees. I don't know what the heck it's called, but it's an app. And he messaged his supervisor, not about the tip question, but to schedule a meeting with him to check his performance. I'm like, rock on, right? I thought that was really awesome. So anyway, so far he's doing good. He's not fired. Okay. Okay, this isn't going in. There we go. Okay, so now we're on social thinking. Is there any discussion about executive functioning or kind of that ready, do, done? We've got about 45 minutes for social thinking, so we have plenty of time. Is there any questions or concerns you might have?
You mentioned when you mentioned that efpractice.com, you mentioned a name after that, Sarah Ward. Is she connected to that website, or does she have a different website?
Nope, that's her website.
That's her. Okay, thank you.
And at the end of the presentation, that's one of the reasons I wanted to send this to Dan if y'all wanted it. There's a slide with executive functioning resources and a slide with social thinking resources on it with the links and stuff.
Okay, cool.
Okay. I have a question for you guys, particularly the disability services providers. Well, and really any of you, because of accommodations at work and 504 plans. So if you have a student who comes into your organization or agency or job or whatever, what are executive functioning accommodations looking like, and what is the feedback or pushback that you get from instructors or professors or bosses?
This is Karen at USD. We focus more on, as far as executive functions, seeing that as more of a service than an accommodation, as far as if a student needs assistance in staying organized, those types of things. How do they prioritize what's due, and how do they make sure they get assignments turned in on time? as a rule, we don't really write accommodations for time extensions on assignments. That's a big no on most college campuses unless there are really extenuating circumstances. Correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, but we generally don't write that as an accommodation, but offer it more as a service.
And so they're responsible for setting up an appointment or a time to be able to come into the Disability Services Office and receive that instruction?
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And we will mention that in there if we meet with a student and we identify that as an issue for that student. We tend to offer that just as, or we're kind of a place for them to stop in and check in with us to see if they're doing okay. And then we generally give them some other options on campus for people who might help out in that area too.
I would echo that same sentiment. We do not write accommodations for executive functioning, but we do provide services so that a student could come in once, twice a week and kind of go over their plan, what they've executed, what they've completed, what they're working on, and try to provide direction that way, a support system. But and it's just basically an offer that they can arrange with one of us, and that way we can keep tabs in a way and help them think about what they've been successful on and what they're striving to complete.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And
at FDSU, we are very fortunate, at least for now, to have a TRIO Student Support Services program. Their grant is in the federal hopper. We'll see how that all plays out. But I have had incredible success, or students that I work with executive functioning challenges have had incredible success working with our TRIO program because they have a retention advisor, somebody that they're meeting with on a regular basis. As an office of one here, I just don't have the time to be that intervener, and I think that a lot of students find that TRIO advisor has been a great resource of support for them.
Right, I would echo that too. That's one of the resources we refer students to on campus. And if I meet a student who's looking at different colleges, I always mention TRIO and mention to them that a lot of campuses have TRIO. Not every campus does, but a lot do. So that's a great resource for students that are transitioning, for them to know about and look for if they're, once they get to a school or if they're looking at schools.
what office
That's
is
funny. That's what I say too. I'll tell students, I'm not here to make you bleed blue, but I want you to know what some options are. And I think TRIO, if a school has a program, a TRIO program or something very similar, that's a great sign that there are a lot of additional resources available to them.
what's TRIO program under, like if a university has it?
At USD, it's under student services, student affairs, that area. I don't think, Nancy, is it under student affairs at SDSU too?
Was from until last summer. It's now migrated under academic affairs, but that's very, very new. It was always under student affairs up until then. It don't tell you where it has to be. It's just it's a federal grant program.
I was also going to say that we have some graduate students that, their lives are a little bit more complicated, and they've done a variation of that get started, do, and done list just through email to me because they want to be able to have some sort of organization, but not have to commit to a time that they have to come in and see me. So they'll send me by email what it is that they got done from the week before, what they still need to do and plan on getting done for the week. And that's just emailed once a week, and we touch base that way. And that seems to work.
Kind of checks and balances.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's kind of that accountability piece because it's a motivator sometimes. If they know they're going to have to, quote, answer to somebody, then it kicks them in the butt a little bit. Yeah. Which I think everybody functions that way a little bit. If we know we're going to have to answer to somebody.
And if they lack some of those executive functioning skills, then sometimes, you know, parents or partners or whatever are the ones that are the kind of the accountability,
Right.
let's say, coach, although
Mhm.
that's not what it seems like to them, maybe.
Yeah.
So they really don't want to. A couple of students have said, I don't really want to have my spouse or my parents do this part for me, but I know that I need to have a check-in. So it's like we set up something that works best for them and their style, but yet it is a variation of that do, done.
Okay. Yeah. And I just was looking at the chats. I always forget this is an option on Zoom because I just do. And Karen said, I might be recognizing myself too much here on some days. Okay. So I think that is really important because it varies. Our abilities vary based on what's already on our plate, based on what our setting events are. Okay. So, but think about the stress. Just, I mean, listen to you guys for those 13 minutes I was on before I started or whatever it was. The stress that people are feeling, and right now it's about COVID and, you know, the uncertainties with that, but you know, that's not the only stressor. And so, you know, you think about that in terms of how you're able to function when there's setting events that impair your abilities, and then apply that to some of our students who feel that every day, day in and day out. Honestly, I don't know how they do it. I don't.
Well, a lot of the students with ADHD that I talk to spend a lot of time beating themselves up over not being able to accomplish. And I always try to reiterate to them that, you know, it's okay. It's okay that you struggle with this. It doesn't make you a bad person, you know.
Yeah.
New frame, new game. Just start again. Just keep starting over again and keep making that forward progress if you can. And try not to put all that energy into just berating yourself.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I just try to empathize a little bit, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I know that caused a lot of anxiety for those students.
When I visit with a student who is, I mean, they're just so incredibly overwhelmed with all the things that are happening at this time, or even before that, this time, we try to find the one or two nuggets of success and what's going right, and try to somehow quell some of those fears, and maybe just take one thing that has been a success and talk about that and what that feels like. Sometimes that makes a little bit of difference in how they carry forward the rest of the day. You've highlighted so well how they can just shut down at times. And I try to find that one thing that could possibly help them keep going and you know, take and just look forward to doing something else and not feel that crushing overwhelmness that can paralyze anybody almost, but certainly with this population, it gets to be extreme.
Yeah. And that rabbit hole is quick to go down. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, yeah, I don't know. We don't have any great options, I don't think, but all right. Let's move on to sharing space, social thinking. And I know many of you have heard me talk about social thinking quite a bit. So this is 100% an overview. It is no means meant to look at it from an intervention perspective. I just wanted to give you guys nuggets of information so you could think about it as it applies to the larger experience of your students or your workers, your coach, you know, your supervisees. Okay. The ability to know that others are having thoughts about us and we are having thoughts about them. That's that mind camera that I talked about previously. Those thoughts lead to memories. People interact with us based on their memories of us. Okay. And that right there, people interact with us based on their memories of us, comes as a great surprise to the majority of the people that I work with. Okay. I'll give you an example. One of the guys that I'm working with is just turned 12, and I've been working with him for 6 years. So I think he was just turning 6 when I started working with him. And he is one of the rudest sounding people you'd ever want to meet, and has incredibly limited ability to take the perspective of others. In fact, he'll say he doesn't care. Okay. And whenever I hear that, I don't care what you think, those are usually the kids who care the most. Right. And it's been my experience anyway. And he's been struggling with Zoom. He's in middle school, first year of middle school. We were just getting his act together with middle school, and then COVID hit. And he despises Zoom. And he also has learned power with the close button, so end camera button. It's really, really easy to hit the end camera button, and there is nothing the other person can do, and his mom can't follow through with him because he will have significant challenging behaviors with her. So we started going to different places and kind of meeting up outside. Last week we went to Lower Tut Hill and by the Frisbee Park there, and we're gabbing and stuff. And he has about an attention span for social thinking of about 16 or 17 minutes. And so I have to come with my A game every single time I work with him, because he will kick my hiney if I don't. Right. And I mean, he has attacked me before, but I mean, emotionally and verbally be aggressive towards me. And so as we're sitting there and he said something rude, I don't even remember what it was. And I looked at him and I said, buddy, I said, that comment and what you just said to me was so rude. And if it wasn't me, you would be in trouble. Right? Other people would have way too weird of thoughts about that. It would impact friendships. It would impact teachers. Some of his teachers are afraid of him, by the way. And I said, when you sound rude, I'm going to tell you every single time because I love you. Right? You are important to me and I want you to know. Right? And he looked at me and he got tears in his eyes and he said, I would never try to hurt you, Brittney. I said, I'm not hurt. But you need to know that other people would be. Other people, it would impact their social memory of you. And he said, I had no idea I was rude. 6 years I've been working with him. 6 years, right? I was like, right in my head. On the outside, I'm going, oh, dude, right? And it wasn't like, it was kind of an aha moment, but it wasn't, I knew it wasn't going to change his behavior. My goal was not to make him feel bad. My goal was to let him know that other people have thoughts, feelings, and ideas. Believe me, I have tried other ways, right? And it seemed to work. And so then he said, so you're telling me if I'm rude to you, you're just going to tell me? And I said, yeah, I'm just going to tell you. Right. And it's not that I don't like you. It's not that I don't want to be your friend or hang out with you anymore. It's that you won't know otherwise. Right. And then he gets into a little bit of a pity party. But then I said, you know, you can be sad about it or you can change it. That makes sense? Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Because he's the captain and I'm the rudder. Okay. All right. And I've never used that analogy with him, by the way. You'd be like, well, whatever. I don't care about your boat. So, okay. Some of the core concepts, expected and unexpected behavior, social detective, 4 parts of communication, size of problem, social behavior map. All of these concepts can be finagled, can be utilized, can be massaged for any age range. Okay, so for the young kid, I usually do say social detective, and I break out my magnifying glass and we go around looking for clues and we listen with our eyes and our ears, and it's very interactive and gross motor based. For the physician that I'm working with, it is not. Right? His IQ is far higher than mine. He is always like 16 steps ahead of me in terms of cognition and like 25 steps behind me in terms of thinking of others. Okay, so it's a very fine balance. So I will say being a social observer means you need to listen with your eyes and your ears, and you need to make a guess about what the other person is thinking or feeling. This is what it would look like. We use videos. It's much more sophisticated. Okay, all right. Oh, go ahead. No, okay, sorry. Social detective, listening with your eyes and your ears, taking that information, you're putting it into your brain, and because most of the people that I work with are incredibly intelligent, or at least average, right? I say your brain is so powerful. You have amazing power to manipulate what you see and hear and think in order to have the best outcome for yourself. So I'm putting them in the driver's seat. It might not be true, but I'm putting them in the driver's seat. Right? Because most of the people that I work with are what their knowledge, their cognition is one of the best parts of their personalities, right? They've been told since they were 2 years old that they're smart, right? Okay. And why smart is such an amazing adjective, I don't quite know, but it is. So putting it into our brains to determine the knowledge that we have on the topic. So expected behavior, and this is for anybody, expected behavior leads to good thoughts and comfortable feelings in others. Unexpected behavior leads to weird thoughts and uncomfortable feelings in others. That delineation between thoughts and feelings is very important, okay? Because they think that their thoughts should supersede feelings, but they don't really understand feelings. Most of the people that I work with have 3 emotion words: mad, happy, and sad. Okay, if that experience doesn't fit mad, happy, and sad, they don't know what to call it and they get angry. Right? Sadness leads to anger and like, right? Mad or happiness, if they're not understanding why they're not as happy as the other people are. Okay, so I'll give you one example. I was doing an emotion thermometer with someone, this was years ago, and I got a whole bunch of pictures. We picked them out together, with not clip art, or Google Images. We cut them out of magazines, right? Because I was trying to get at some other things too. And we could have done it that way. Anyway, and one of the pictures that he chose was a picture of a golden retriever. And it was a very nice golden retriever. And the golden retriever looked content to me. Right? And then we put a hierarchy of happy synonyms: excited, elated, glad, overjoyed, whatever the list was. So I'm looking at these pictures and I'm thinking the golden retriever is going to be at the bottom of happy, right? In my head. I didn't say that. I would never say that. He took that golden retriever and he put it up there with whatever it was, ecstatic, whatever was the most happy. And I went, right? And then the rest of them were in whatever order they were in. And so we got done and I said, that golden retriever is ecstatic? He said, yeah, can't you tell? And I went, oh boy, do we have a lot of work to do, right? Because if his understanding, he loves animals. The reason he chose it had nothing to do with his facial characteristics or the body language that this dog was portraying. It had to do with the fact that he liked golden retrievers and they made him ecstatic. So think about that in the real world. Yikes, right? Okay, and we got through it and worked through it and everything. And he still wanted that golden retriever as his ecstatic picture. I don't care, whatever, it is what it is. All right, this skill, meaning being a social detective, is dependent on the context or the setting of an event or situation. Okay, so expected behavior at a football game is much different than expected or unexpected behavior at church. Okay, and one of the things that many of my learners struggle with is reading the room. Okay, how do I read the room to know what's expected or unexpected? All right, the next thing I want to talk about is the 4 parts of communication. And this is really wordy, but it breaks down to, I think about someone I want to share space with, I establish physical presence, and that could be via eye contact, it could be via eye gaze, or it could be by literally putting my body closer to that group or individual or group of people. I use my eyes to make a decision about how I enter, enter the situation verbally, and then I use my language, and then it starts all the way back up at 1 again. Okay, you and I do this like that, right? We're basically reading the room and making decisions about what to talk about, when to talk about it, and who to say it to, and then revising based on the feedback they give us. Okay, this 4 parts of communication is something that I have to, and expected, unexpected, is something that I have to cycle back to over and over and over again with my learners, because they're rigid thinkers. So when it's, and many kids with people with autism have generalization difficulties. So if I teach it under one condition and one set of circumstances, which I never do, by the way, but if I would, they're not going to be able to apply that when it comes to dating or a job or a relationship with a spouse or whatever. All right. Okay, the other thing that I spent a lot of time on is size of problem. And here's why I do it. If you look, I won't be one because it's emotional regulation, it goes right along with executive functioning, but if you look at big, medium, and little, if you focus on just this top column, this big, most people that I work with have big reactions to small problems. Okay? If I define what a big problem is, then their size of the reaction then becomes maladaptive. Okay, by definition. And I don't ever talk this stuff. I show them something like this. I made this into a chart, into a table, just because I was doing it on PowerPoint. But I have various types of visuals that I use depending on the person that I'm working with, from pictures to picture symbols to narratives based on the learner, okay? So, but the long and the short of it is, a big problem takes months or years to solve. Many people, usually different groups of people, there's always physical pain or danger. Some examples might be a flood, an accident with injuries, and I added pandemic for this just because, you know, here we are, right? So our size of reaction should be larger to a big problem. It is perfectly expected to cry when you're faced with pandemic situations. It's perfectly acceptable to scream when you're in an accident with injuries and your mom is hurt, right? It's perfectly acceptable to get angry when someone steals the PS4 that you saved money for 6 months in order to obtain, and the cops aren't going to do anything about it. So you see how that is an example of a big problem. Okay, so the size of our reaction, it should match the size of our problem. It is perfectly not acceptable to laugh and have fun at a funeral, right? We didn't read the room. The size of the problem doesn't match the size of the reaction, right? Okay, so the little one is, most people ignore a little problem. It's a short time, it's usually solved right away. The people involved are just yourself. There's usually no emotion, or shouldn't be any emotion, but might be a slight level of confusion. Examples are, your favorite snack is gone, your homework is lost, because you should be able to solve those problems by yourself. That makes sense. So if my favorite snack is gone and I'm sitting at the cupboard going, I can't believe you're such a numbskull, this is the stupidest thing, you're right, big reaction to a small problem. That's the reaction challenge, is what gives people weird thoughts and uncomfortable feelings, because the size of your reaction does not match the size of your problem. And that's when we get in trouble, socially, privileges away, whatever. Questions or comments about that? All right, this social behavior map is another strategy that I use pretty much with all of the people that I work with. And I know it's kind of small. I just want, you can, if you Google social behavior map, or if you go to Michelle Garcia Winner's socialthinking.com, that's one of the websites under the social thinking resources, you can get a free one of these. If you want me to send you one, I'll send it to you, whatever you want. It's public information. So much like a ready, do, done, it's taking a social situation and you're applying what you and I do automatically in a written format. And one of the things that I hope you guys have gotten from this is writing things down and showing it to the learners that I work with is imperative, right? For me, I think of, Charlie Brown's teacher, wah, 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 right? If I'm not utilizing a visual support, there's room for interpretation. The individual that I'm working with will say, I don't think that's what you said, or that can't possibly apply here. But if we've written it down and they're the ones giving me the ideas of what to write down, they're basically contradicting themselves if they fight me on it. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So situation, let's say, and I can't write on this, sorry, but situation is going to the grocery store. And now this is a whole different situation, but going to the grocery store, the people are me, my wife, and the other people that are at the store. And then you scooch down here. You see how there's a little number 2? Okay. So once you define the situation that you want to discuss, and it's numbered 1, 2, then you go down to the unexpected behaviors that might be done in this situation. So unexpected might be knocking my cart into someone. It might be not paying for my groceries. It might be going down the aisle the wrong way with these arrows that they've got going on. It could be yelling. It could, you get the idea. Anything unexpected. And then you go up here to expected. So there's a number little 3, and then you write down the expected grocery store behaviors. Here's the column that most of my people that I work with really struggle with. As a result of these expected behaviors, how others might feel about the behavior. Here's the answer I get. How would I know? Okay, so then we do a lot of, if we need to, we'll do role playing. I might show some videos that are similar to that. We might say, okay, so if you were in the grocery store and the person in front of you was paying for their groceries, how would that make you feel? Calm? Yeah, calm. So we write calm there. That makes sense. Or happy, or not frustrated, whatever words they want to use. And then how do they act? And then how does that make me feel? And then we do the same thing down here for the unexpected behaviors, how others might feel about the behavior, how they act as a result. It's kind of like the consequence column. And then how that makes me feel. Then what we've got is a visual representation for this situation of what are the expected behaviors and what are the unexpected behaviors. It's kind of like a social story, if you remember those from Carol Gray. It's kind of like a social story, but it gets into the differences between expected and unexpected behaviors. Most of the time, this unexpected column, they get it. They nail it. Bingo, bango, bongo. They'll just like, it's just like a little, list of unexpected behaviors they understand. The expected behaviors are usually a little more challenging for them to come up with. And you can put anything on a social behavior map. Situation, picking nose. Situation, research project. Situation, and for research project, I would do ready, do, done, right? Situation, going to grandma's house, flying on a plane, whatever, doesn't matter. In fact, there's a whole book of them, right? And I don't ever use the book, but it kind of gives you some ideas about what social behavior maps look like. And this is available at the Wagner Center, at the Center for Disabilities too, or you can just look at it on her website, on the Social Thinking website. Questions about social behavior maps? All right, so why? Why do we talk about this? I think we probably all know, but thinking about what skills point towards the best outcome, because that's our goal with whoever it is that we're working with or supporting or whatever. What is the perspective taking level? Okay, and I'm not going to talk about this much, but Michelle Garcia Winner has a set of, or a listing of perspective taking level, a hierarchical list. And I can take any of my learners, you could take any of your learners and place them on that list in terms of their perspective taking level. And it also is aligned to interventions and probable outcomes in terms of support. Okay. And if you want that, I'm happy to send it to you. Otherwise, it is on her website too, on socialthinking.com. So what is their perspective taking level, and what is the best outcome based on their perspective taking level? Lack of mental health concerns is more indicative for a better outcome as it applies to social thinking and executive functioning intervention. The ability to think about thinking, okay? Almost all my learners can think about thinking. They have average to above average IQs. The challenge is to think about thinking as it applies to thoughts of others. They can think about their own thoughts. They can think about abstract concepts. Think about Sheldon on Big Bang Theory, right? The man can think about abstract concepts as it applies to physics, right? But in terms of his place on the couch, not so much. Right? Okay. What is their support network? I find the individuals that I've worked with who have a very limited support network really struggle, really struggle. And the mental health components really amp up when their support network is not there or is limited. And then the intrinsic motivation to obtain whatever, job, schooling, relationships. Okay. How invested are they? That is these factors are what I find have greatest impact on their outcome as adults. And really, wouldn't it apply to any of us? Yeah. Okay, some of the red flags are presence of mental health issues and what is the significance, and also what is the different types of mental health. I have some individuals who bipolar and schizophrenia or sociopathologic concerns are present, and that's a much different outcome than individuals who have depression or paranoia or anxiety. And I don't want to say a little because I don't think that's an appropriate terminology, but just the impact on their day-to-day functioning is different. Okay. Lower perspective taking level, rigid thinking is predominant. Poor or no support network, and daily living skills such as hygiene. I find that to be a very big red flag for difficulties with outcomes. Because what does poor hygiene say? Lack of perspective taking, lack of organization, right? And sensory differences. I have a lot of individuals who don't take a bath because they do not like shampoo. How it feels, how it impacts their skin, etc., or lotion or whatever. Okay, here are the executive functioning supports that I talked about. Oops, sorry. This LD Online has lots of information, lots of really good articles and resources. EF Practice, we talked about already. This is an article, a CHAD article on the EF Practice website that I thought was worth highlighting. Sally Ozanoff is one of the kind of biggest researchers in the area of executive functioning, particularly as it applies to autism. So I cited that. This is just one of her resources. Again, different LD online articles, one about physical impulsivity, one about behavior, and then also one about how to help them turn in their homework. Understood.org, and then this last one, this CIP Worldwide, is the college internship program. And if you haven't looked at college, do you guys know about the college internship program? CIP? Okay, it is a very good network of support for resources I don't recommend it to families very often in terms of attendance because it is crazy expensive. But for interventionists and for parents who are looking for information about EF support for the college student, it has lots of information on it. And the founder of, hang on a second, I gotta find it. Oh, there it is. The founder of the college internship program wrote this book, Made for Good Purpose. And his name is Michael P. McManmon, M-A-N-M-O-N, McManmon, Made for Good Purpose. It's a really good book as it applies to thinking about autism and ADHD and Asperger's, or whatever you want to call it, in becoming an independent adult. Has some really good information. I don't like reading. I love reading, but I don't like reading when the information doesn't give me immediate benefit when it comes to my job. So I just won't read fluff or things that are too technical. I just don't do it. It doesn't give me the information I need when I'm working with kids or adults. And this book did give me good functional information.
Brittney, what was the author's name again?
It's Michael P. McManmon. McManmon is M-C-M-A-N-M-O-N.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And that I didn't put in the resources. I just kind of thought about it. And then the social thinking resources, I have a lot of stuff on my website. There's socialthinking.com is Michelle Garcia Winners. You'll notice this little trademark symbol up there. Social thinking is a trademarked intervention in theory. And the socialthinking.com is where you will find lots and lots of resources. She does a great newsletter. She does a great blog. It's very functional. It goes right into your inbox, and it's chock full of information about social thinking. So you get a lot of benefit for your reading time, I find anyway. Students with Asperger's Syndrome, A Guide for College Personnel is a very, very good book about Asperger or the ASD experience on college campuses. And then this Socially Curious and Curiously Social is a book that I use all the time for my college age and some of my adults. Now, where is it? You can tell I haven't been in my office. My books are all messed up. Oh, there it is. This is the old cover. You can tell when I have sticky notes sticking out of books that they're good. So, all right. Questions, concerns, comments? We have about 10 minutes.